Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here, the musicians and artists I visit with, please be sure and hit the like button below and also subscribe to the channel. Steve Bolton, aka Steve Boltz, is an English guitarist and songwriter. Steve kicked off his music career by joining prog rock band Atomic Rooster in 1972 and playing on the album Made in England. The following year would see him leave the band. In 1974, along with ex-Rarebird member Mark Ashton, he formed the band Headstone and recorded a couple of albums in 1974 and 1975. See my recent interview with Mark Ashton. In 1980, Mr. Boltz would record with David Bowie, and in '83 he would join Paul Young and play and write on most of his releases. In 1989, Steve was asked by Pete Townshend to join The Who on their The Kids Are All Right tour. Beginning in 1996, Steve worked as a session guitarist for several years. And in 2013 came a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Galaxy Music Awards. In 2016, Steve joined a reformed lineup of Atomic Rooster. My guest currently plays in his own band, Dead Man's Corner. Well, welcome, Steve.
Hi there, Greg. How you doing?
All right, all right. It's a little.
I've got my life.
You've got it. There you go.
Well, let's go home on a tube looking at people coming at me. I said, "Don't fuck with me."
Yes. There you got it. You got it. See, there's a feather in your cap right there. Yes. Yes.
It was at a club in Soho. I had to give a little speech, and I said, "Oh, I'm a bit disappointed. I was hoping for Best Newcomer award, but
right. You'll take it. You'll take it. Well, here we go.
People will see this.
Yes. Yes. We'll try. Well,
I'm the one who's going to try.
You're going to try. Okay. We'll both do our best. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
Well, I was born in an area of North Manchester, Oldham, and it's about 6 miles from the city centre of Manchester, but a very sort of full of cotton mills, cotton. So when I looked out of my bedroom window, although we were right on the edge of the moors, so because of beautiful scenery, it was dotted with huge. I mean, I'm talking huge cotton mills that were weaving mills. So we had so I could count the chimneys, these huge chimneys. A lot of them have either been pulled down now, but these were Victorian monolithic buildings that homage to King Cotton. So that's that area of North Manchester. Manchester in itself then in the 50s was littered with these huge cotton mills.
Very industrial. Very industrial.
I ended up working almost when I had to get a job when I left school. I left school in a hurry.
Did you?
I left school in a hurry. I got a job. It was supposed to be like just a temporary job because I got my qualifications at O levels. I took my exam, but I didn't hang around to collect them. I hot-footed it down to Birmingham to join a band. Slept on a studio floor, but I came back with my tailboots in my luggage. But anyway, I ended up getting a job in one of these cotton mills. Still living. I'm an only child, you may have guessed, okay. But I ended up in one of these cotton mills, and inside you would not believe. We're talking like each floor is like the size of a football pitch.
Really?
And these huge weaving machines, which has just got things that knock shuttles back. So and the morning I went in there, there was one working. I was in the cellar with a bloke down there helping unload all the lorries with the stuff. It was just a part-time job,
Yeah.
I went on this floor, and there was one of these machines working out of like about 500 machines, just one, before they all kicked off, and the noise.
Yeah, I was going to say the noise. I imagine.
I thought I cannot do this. I went home to my parents and I can't. This is so loud. And my dad looked at me, he said, "Wait until you start playing rock guitar, then you'll know what loud is."
Then you know what it is.
I was born in Oldham, and I saw you had another of your interviewees was James Litherland.
Yes.
And James, at my high school, my grammar school, he was in my class. In fact, we had a band together called the
Yeah.
Pop. And I've got to tell you that when I started playing guitar, I was into the Shadows, Hank Marvin, that sort of thing. And
Right.
I wanted to be the rhythm guitar player. I had no interest in playing lead guitar. It was a bizarre thing.
Yes. Speaking of the cotton mills, I think if I lived back in the day, late what was it, late 19th century, I think I would have joined the Luddites. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I would have been part of that movement if I was living over there. Yeah,
There's a
but
great song. Sorry, there's a great song that is Louise, my wife. It's kind of our wedding song. We have two wedding songs. We got married. This is my second wife, Louise, and we're so happy, you know. But we had two songs, one of which was Midlake. You know the band Midlake?
yes, I do. Yes, I'm familiar with them.
Roscoe, which is
Yes. Okay.
about that thing being born in 1891. You know,
Yeah.
and like the whole, it's so Americana, but it's probably one of the best tracks you'll ever hear. People
Yeah.
up like Roscoe.
Check.
Yeah,
Yes.
there are lots of different remixes of it. You know, there's one the Dragons something or other. Oh, I've got pigeons on the fence here. Better get my shotgun out.
Get your shotgun out.
Yeah,
Take them out. Take them out.
good
Yeah.
job in 2 hours.
Right. Right. Well, were either one of your parents musically inclined at all?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Okay.
I in the 50s, we didn't even have like a record player, a radiogram or something.
Okay.
Uh, I actually forced my parents' hand to buy me a record player by buying a record. And it was like, I bought a record with my pocket money. Now you have to buy me.
No, you have to play something to play it on.
I remember the first time I heard a record, I think it was the Jeff Beck group. What's the first Jeff Beck album?
What is the
Truth,
first?
Truth, the first Jeff Beck, which is great. It's,
Yes.
yeah, it's a big, you know, and a friend of mine played it on a radiogram, and I could hear like, I said, "What's that knocking sound?" He said, "That's the bass drum."
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never heard that
You
before.
hadn't heard that. Yeah.
Because I had like my little speaker like that.
Yes. Yes.
What's that knocking sound? He said, "It's the bass drum, that is." You know,
Yes. First time. Yeah. What was the guitar, the first instrument you learned to play?
well, I got, yeah. If, there's this myth about if you're going to learn an instrument, get a cheap one.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
rubbish. If you get a cheap guitar with
Yeah.
an accent like that, you can't play it. That's going to
Right.
put you off, isn't it? Get the
Right.
best chord, and at least
Yeah.
you have some idea if you can carry it on. You know, yeah.
Right.
I think my first guitar, my first electric guitar was a thing called a Broadway. It must have been, I don't know. It's a weird looking thing. I've got pictures of my very first gig, and I remember it had one pickup, but it's really ugly guitar. It had this kind of Fender headstock. It must have been made in Russia or somewhere. But the lead for it, the guitar lead, instead of being like a jack to jack, like 1/4 inch jacks,
Right.
it had a lead. The jack socket on the guitar was like a micro jack, you know, like a small jack.
Oh, okay.
So I had a lead that had molded jacks on because we're talking like back in the day when, you know,
Yeah.
couldn't even get orange juice up north. You know,
Uh,
that's why I've got a mouth like a blown fuse box because
okay. I follow you.
oh, we did a gig in my very first band. We did a gig in a notorious bikers club
Oh, okay.
not far from us, and it was really intimidating. We were like 14 and we didn't know, and these bikers were like that.
Right, right there. Yeah, in your face. Yeah.
And we had a little break, and then when I went on the second set, someone had cut my lead, just cut it with a
Did,
knife.
did they?
So I couldn't use any of it.
They
I couldn't play.
they hijacked it. Wow.
But it
Yeah.
hijacked my jack. Yeah,
Yeah. You hijacked your jack.
so that, and then I got a harmony, American guitar, harmony stratotone, which if you do research on Brian Jones, he plays a harmony stratotone.
Yeah.
So that harmony was cool guitar. In the band I had with James Litherland, the bass,
Yeah.
bass harmony guitar. I had a harmony guitar, and Jimmy had a harmony guitar. So we were like,
Oh, all of you. Well, what was the band's name with James?
that was the band called The Puzzle.
Okay.
And James even then was great singer, great guitar player. So basically, yeah, I mean, I can backpedal, but we went to school together, you know, and we used to enthuse about stuff, and we had a band together. And he came, I can't remember, it's all a bit fuzzy, of course.
Oh, naturally.
He came to London because you had to come to London to, you know, to make it.
Yeah.
And we'd seen that he was in Colosseum with John Heisman.
Oh, yeah.
And then I came down. I was in another band then. It was Central Manchester based, and we decamped overnight in our own old battered Ford van, and another. we had boxes of Kellogg's variety pack of cornflakes and Frosties and the whole thing. You know, like I think one of the parents had like a card for a discount superstore, so we got all these boxes of cereal. And we came down, and I had a girlfriend had gone down early, and she got us a house near Heathrow Airport, or under the flight path. So the house, and we got down there, and she came down and got us a house. She also came down and got another new boyfriend as well, but that was by the by. So we lived in this house, and we slowly like became like, you know, like, because we were living on cornflakes.
Right.
And the only way we could get milk for the cornflakes, we had a rotor on the wall, and to get petrol and milk.
Yeah.
Like there were 6 of us, including a roadie that couldn't drive, but the 6 in this house, and we had to get up early. 2 of us and we had a rotor to go and steal milk from the doorsteps, and also go and siphon fuel, so we could get to the next gig. That we had gigs, you know. So we didn't have any money, so we had to go and do the siphoning fuel.
Oh, you were doing that early on there. Well, yeah. Cornflakes are they still popular over there for breakfast?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they are. Yeah, my dad's breakfast was cornflake, warm milk.
They've always been here. Kellogg's is our brand over here.
Yeah, well, that's the Kellogg. Yeah.
Okay, it is Kellogg's there too. Yeah, yeah.
No, you know, there's a joke. You know, David Beckham is a footballer.
Yeah.
But very good looking, great footballer now. He's managed to marry one of Spice Girls, but not the brightest tool in the box.
Yes.
And come on, there's a joke I quite like. He said that David Beckham, let me get this right. He bought a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle set, and he got, before he realized it was a box of cornflakes.
I've heard other versions of that. The blonde jokes. Yeah. She thought she had worked the puzzle, and it was cornflakes. Yeah, I've heard that.
Can't say. That's what I'm sure you can't say that anymore.
Oh no, yeah, it's not PC anymore, is it? Right. There you go. Remember that. Right. Well, what were some early influences, musical bands? You've mentioned a few, but what were some others for you?
The very first musical influence to me was Hank Marvin, The Shadows.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like that Strat sound. And I mean, you listen to those first couple of Shadows albums with Jet Harris, and
Right.
it's just a master.
Yes. Yes. You know, I believe I like the Shadows, their music, and like you said, Hank, better than our Ventures. I thought the Ventures were okay, but they're real generic sounding,
Yeah,
and
yeah, no.
and I
Hank,
like the Shadows much better. Yeah.
for many years, uh, I was in the closet with Hank Marvin because
Uh-huh.
although people like Pete Townshend, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck are all into it, it was that the Shadows, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for many years, I wouldn't admit it,
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
the story.
It was. It
When
wasn't cool. It wasn't cool to admit it back. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
my first marriage, and I was my wife had left me basically, and for a heart surgeon in Harley Street,
Uh,
I couldn't compete with that.
yeah. Right.
I left you for a heart surgeon, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I actually did, Harley Street is like the place where all the private clinics are in the centre of London. She was working there and started this affair with a heart surgeon. I ended up in the middle of the day in Harley Street shouting, "Fix this! Fix
Okay. There could be a lot of jokes around that one. Yeah, the heart. Yeah. Well,
it!"
you
Sorry,
know, no,
back.
no. Mentioning, at the time, certain bands that you wouldn't mention that you liked, but maybe later on it was okay. ABBA was one. That, oh, back in the day, no, you were too, what twee, I guess could be the word you guys use if you like ABBA. But now, it's like, I mean, it's a great band, great sound.
The funny thing, do we like them now? Like when ELO came out,
Yeah.
Jeff Lynne's ELO, the thing.
Oh, yes,
When
yes.
that came out, we were all sat around smoking joints and listening to Yes.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Now,
Right. Yeah. Yes.
now, fantastic. You
Yeah.
listen, those Mr. Blue Sky, they're absolutely amazing records. But I don't know whether I'm liking them in retrospect, if it's ironic or something.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Uh-huh.
have you heard of it? Iron.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Here we go.
There you go.
Remind yourself.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll tell you the story that when my wife was, so I had a few dates with a few dodgy women in this period, and one of them, I remember I went out for this date with this woman, this young lady, and we went out. We had a lovely evening. And I said, "Would you like to come back, to my place, have a coffee, maybe have a cigar?" And she said, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Yeah. Lady smoking a cigar. Yeah. Yeah.
Came to the bar, and I had my records out, my vinyl. I said, "I'll go and make a coffee, and would you like a little brandy?" She said, "Sure, why not? I'll get the cigars," I said.
Yeah.
And I said, "I'll have a look through the record collection." And when she came back, I said, and she hadn't, I said, "Oh, shall I put a record on?" She said, "Yeah, sure." And I thought, this is going really well, it's good. So I got the Shadows first album. I said, "Are you into the Shadows?"
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
No. See you later, pal.
And bye-bye.
you know.
Yeah, what did you do, right? Well, I just want to play the Shadows. Yeah, I think it was a generation gap there too, I
But
think, yeah.
that's another one. The same guy that said, "What?" I said, "What's that knocking sound?" He said, "That's the bass drum."
Yeah.
Like an older boy at school, like Maurice.
Uh,
I remember. I had the Shadows first EP, and they're there, and they got
yeah.
the Strats and the tremolo arm on Hank Strat. I thought it was like. I said, "What's that?" And he went, "That's the gear lever. That's how he changes gear on the guitar." And I believed it, but that was really
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, the gear, like a car, changing gears on the guitar. Oh, that's fun. That's
Oh,
funny.
yes, the Shadows, and
Yeah, I like them. Their material away from Cliff Richard. I didn't like them so much backing Cliff.
no, yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
And Marvin was Blomqvist bad boy, but he then went on to do these fantastic solo records, Jet Harris, and with the drummer from the Shadows sometimes, Jet Harris, Tony Meehan.
Yeah.
And Jet Harris adopted the Fender Bass 6.
Yes, right.
Which it looks like a Jaguar, but it's a Bass 6, and it's got a tremolo arm on and everything. And I was obsessed with that instrument my whole life because I bought those records. There was he did one Besame Mucho, or
Yes,
it's got low stuff. If you listen to the Fender Bass 6 solo on Wichita Lineman.
Mm-hmm. That's a great sound. You're right.
That's a Fender Bass 6.
Yeah, I love that sound. Oh man, I think that's what makes that song too. You're right. Yeah, I think so.
He went on, and then I'm trying to think of all these things. I actually ended up playing in the 2000s. I played with Ray Davies from the Kings.
Oh, okay.
I played on a solo album of his, and it was funny, because a lot of my friends would say, "Oh, you're working with Ray Davies. Be careful. He's a bit of a bastard. He's like."
Yeah. We're going to give you credit for that.
At the time, I was renting a cottage about an hour and a half outside London to do some songwriting. My parents had died, and there was a bit of money, so I rented a cottage to get out of London. I thought I'd get it together in the country, like that. But I got this job working with Ray Davies, and I had to go and meet Ray at his studio in Crouch End in North London. But he was great because I'm vegetarian, he's vegetarian. He would meet me at the studio door with these biscuits, and like, "Steve, have you tried these biscuits? They're really good." And I thought, Ray Davies, the bastard. I said, one day I said to him, it's funny because I had to, when you're a guitar player, and you do back then, it's all digital stuff. What if you were booked to, I'll get a producer going, "Steve, can you play on this album?" Blah blah blah, So if you're doing the whole album, you'd have to be there and do the backing tracks with the drums and bass or whatever, with a view to redoing your parts again later.
Okay.
So you would sort of like be there with the drums and bass, and you'd be doing like guide guitar parts, knowing full well that you'd still have to go back. So they would go after like 10 days, do their bits, they'd go on, and then I'll be there, So one of these days, I was doing guitar overdubs with Ray Davies. I said, "Ray, I've got to tell you this story." I said, back in Manchester when I was like 14 years old, I'm an only child. My parents are really straight-laced, no. I was sat on the sofa between my mum and dad. I said, "You were on TV on some program, and you really got me, And it was very shaky camera work, black and white, England, really, really bad, Girl in your hat. I said, and I'm telling Ray that, got that tooth, And just for the guitar solo, he went right back. So there was only a microphone there, and he came back. He went, "Oh no!" My dad went, "What the bloody hell's?"
Yeah.
And inside, I'm going,
"Yeah." Right. If your parents didn't like it, you loved it. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So Ray Davies, one day I went to the studio, and he was a bit quiet, He was a bit quiet. I said, "You all right, Ray? You're a bit quiet, like, today." He said, "Well," he said, "I am." He said, "You know my brother?" I said, "No." "You Dave, He said, he said, he's a Canutt, don't you? That's an anagram of." I said, "Well, I've heard, that they were famously always had fights." He said, "You know what he's done?" I said, "No." He said, "He lives in LA." I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "You know what the bastard's done? He's had a heart attack, and now he's sleeping on my sofa, and I hate him." And he's putting him around. I'm thinking, okay. I said, "Hey,
Uh,
out of your family business, you know.
right, right. TMI, TMI. Yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
well, back. So yeah,
yeah.
and then
Well,
the people that I listened to when I was at school and coming back and playing and trying to learn how to play was people. I was into Paul Kossoff from Free.
oh, yes, yes. Right.
And the one album I had was the one with a girl leaping across the camera with stars in it. It's yeah, I actually was obsessed with that, and
Uh,
also with Fleetwood Mac, Peter Green's version.
Peter Green. You just mentioned one of my idols. Yeah, Peter Green. Peter Green. Yeah,
And the album Then Play On, which is kind of
yeah.
their Sergeant Pepper.
Yes,
I
yeah.
actually, I actually saw one of his final gigs with Fleetwood Mac when he had the robes, the white robes, and he was playing the Strat. So
Yeah.
he'd gone back to his Hank. The minute I heard Albatross, I thought
Oh,
it's
right.
Hank Marvin.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yes. Yeah.
blatantly obvious he's into Hank Marvin. And then
Yes.
and Peter used to write a little uh, piece in one of the music papers every
Yes.
week, you know, like Melody Maker and New Music Expert. And I remember one day, and I'm up north. I read that he said it's time to hang up the Les Paul now and get the Strat out. You know,
Okay. Yeah. 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 I love, and I tell people this that I love early Fleetwood Mac. And when I heard Albatross and also Man of the World,
oh yeah,
I thought, and then I heard, the blues material, you
yeah,
know, I thought this is not the same Peter Green. This must be somebody else. I couldn't correlate that it was the same, guy. I mean, doing that.
yeah. Well, you know, he joined John Mayall's Blues
That's
Breakers.
right. That's right. Yes.
Uh, and when I think might be with the bass player Mick Fleetwood or somebody said, why are you getting Peter Green in? He can only play two notes, and he's
Right.
got two notes. They are.
Yeah. Well, go back to what led up to you joining Atomic Rooster.
Right. Okay. So what happened? We decamped en masse. My band that I had. You know, it was a great band, fantastic American drummer. Well, his parents were English, but he was born in the States, and he lived in Manchester. So we were a Manchester band, and we came down to. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay. Just gone awfully silent.
No,
For,
I can hear you. I can hear you.
hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. And
Maybe.
so. And so things went horribly. You know, it wasn't very good. We were nicking milk and petrol, and we were starving to death. James Litherland, who was leaving Colosseum, he was a regular visitor to our hovel in West London,
Okay.
and he basically, for want of a better term, he poached the drummer and bass player because they were great, you
Okay.
know, fine, and the other guy and the roadie went back to, and the singer went back to Manchester. But I clung on to London for dear life, you know. So James said, why don't you come and stay at the flat we've got in North London? So I did. So I slept on the floor. Slept on the sofa in their North London apartment, and I got a job playing guitar in Soho in a strip club
Okay.
with a bunch of Spanish guys who didn't speak English, and they've got, yo, yours. So I would start at midnight and get home about 5 o'clock in the morning playing guitar in this strip bar. But then back then, in the music press, in the back pages, bands would advertise, put like classified ads, you know, and there would be big bands who'd put stuff in
Right.
there.
Right.
Like,
Melody Maker. Melody Maker. Yeah.
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 So I answered an ad there,
Yeah.
about that big, and it said Atomic Rooster. I mean, you wouldn't get this now, would you? Like,
No, 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 no.
who
No.
like it's up, form Pete on such, you know, but it had Atomic Rooster require guitar player to start immediately US tour, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
So I answered the ad and I went to, and while this was happening, I was I was a rhythm guitar player in the band that I came down. We had a great guitar player. It was like Eric Clapton. He looked like him, and he played Les Pauls. But I did a bit of lead work with him. But mainly, I was just doing all, and so I became familiar with how to do stuff within chords, you know. But this was like I was going to have to get my shit together, and so James would give me crash courses in lead guitar licks
Okay.
over a course of about a week. So I went for this audition, you know, I'm like, and I have a small Fender amp, and I went, and you said, yeah, well, we'll let you know, and I knew that Atomic Rooster were actually in the charts with The Devil's Answer #2.
Yes, 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 yes.
Went back to my night job, playing this strip club, and one day I came back. You know, we didn't have mobile phones, obviously, then. And the other guys in the apartment were going, they've called you back. They've called you back. They want you to go tonight. I went, oh, okay, right, yeah. So I went for a second audition, and they said, yeah. And Vincent Crane said, yeah, you've got the job, you know. Great.
Wow.
Well, I was like, so all of a sudden, I'm in the music press, and so that's how that started.
Yeah.
And the lineup basically was Vincent Crane on Hammond organ and bass keyboard on the Hammond organ, a bit like the Doors, you know, no bass player.
Right.
And Rick Parnell, who became my drug guru.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's always good to have one of those in the band too. Yeah.
I mean, I'm from Manchester then. I was behind the ears, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You wanted to get any weed, you couldn't outside of London. Now the whole of UK is swamped in all sorts of drugs, like everywhere is, you know.
Yeah.
I'm clean. Look at me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I remember that we rehearsed. I think we rehearsed above a pub in King's Cross in London, and then we had one gig in Plymouth, right down the West Country. And because of Atomic Rooster, we all went down on the train to this gig, first class with press. And we went down to this club, and like I said, I had a 30-watt Fender amp, and it was a basement. It's a bass amp really, and we've been rehearsing. And Vincent Crane had one 4x12 cabinet for the top manual, and one acoustic bass amp for the bottom. And Rick had a huge bass drum, but just single kit. And we had Pete French on vocal.
Yeah, yeah.
We went down the train for this gig, and it's a huge club, low, like rock club, low, and the stage there. I remember when I walked in, I went, and on the stage, in the middle, was the biggest drum kit I'd ever seen, like huge double. And on Vincent Crane's side, the Hammond organ, there were like 6 4x12 cabinets, 3 stack, just for and 2 acoustic reflex cabinets. And my side on a chair. That on a chair is not a good look.
No, it's not. It's
compared with this gear.
Yeah. Right.
But,
Can we move some of that over to my side? Yeah. Right.
So, and I didn't hear a thing I played the whole gig, and I was really upset. But everyone's going, "Oh, that was great." So then we were straight to America.
Yeah. And that was the tour, the album In Hearing Of, right?
Yes, because that was the album that was current.
Yeah.
And it was, so we did 2 tours with Pete French on vocals, but he got poached by Carmine Appice from Cactus.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Right.
But those two tours around the States were like really, there's a baptism of fire.
Was it?
I remember then that was still the 60s, really.
Yes. Yes.
We do gigs, and there'd be like a blue haze of marijuana.
Yes.
Even in theaters, you know, the wings is full of girls and people and you know, it's just madness, you know. But me, I'm like, okay, yeah.
You didn't happen to play Texas, did you?
Sure we did. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
sure.
you did. Okay. Well, I was too young then to be going to concert. You were. Yes.
But
Uh,
I was, yeah, it was just mental. I was telling the bass player in my band that, you know, this guy showed up. All these people used to show. Oh, I used to share a room with Rick,
okay.
uh,
Okay.
drummer. And Rick ended up in This Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah. Okay.
Rick, yeah, he
He
passed
had a
away.
part in that. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but Rick, I would share a room with Rick in Holiday Inns wherever we were.
Yeah.
And the last number, Rick would get off his kit and go into the mic and go, listen, we're staying at the Holiday Inn down the road. We're in room, and he'd give the room number out, and I go like, "What'd you do that for?" Yeah, we get back to the hotel, and there'd be like all these blokes there. Priorities were we
Oh, weed, the drugs.
not
You no women. You expected girls there, and it was a bunch of guys.
he wanted to be a fabulous furry freak brother, and he succeeded.
Okay.
He
Okay.
ended up living in Montana with a beard, like, and that was Rick.
That was Rick.
One guy turned up one day, and he said, I make bespoke guitar straps. You know, so yeah, so I was young and uncool, and he had one. It was kind of like wide leather strap, and I had a Les Paul. It's a
Okay.
very, but he'd woven leather thongs that were like suede thongs that were probably about 4 feet long, and they hung down Roger Daltrey fashion down
Oh, right, right. Yeah.
hundreds of suede thongs. I thought it's cool, it
Yeah.
wasn't cool. So I bought
You thought it was.
the first gig I did. When cowboys ride into town and they got their suede and they just throw it and it wraps itself around.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
looked at it, bum, bum, and it's
yeah,
locked.
yeah,
Guess what happened? When I jumped in the air,
yeah.
all these things went around the guitar neck and went vum, 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 vum. And I went, oh shit. In the middle, all wrapped around the neck.
Uh-huh.
I'm stood there like a lemon trying to take each one off. There must have been like 30 around the neck of
Yeah.
the.
It backfired, huh?
Yeah,
A little bit.
learning process.
Learning, yeah. Well, you played on the next album, 72's Made in England.
Yes.
And now, prior to this, Atomic Rooster was more of a prog rock type band, but this album had more of a kind of a funk soul feel on this one.
I mean, Vincent Crane used to say, yeah, oh yeah, so Pete French had left.
Yeah.
Vincent Crane always used to say to me, and I could never understand it. He said he was into James Brown big time.
Yeah.
In fact, you listen to The Crazy World of Arthur Brown.
Yes. Yes.
First time was a track, I Got Money.
Yeah. Right. I know that one. Yeah.
And I didn't. I listened to it. I didn't really know that album. I listened to it relatively recently, and it's a James Brown track.
Yeah.
And the James Brown track is really but really fast. Ba, 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 dee, ba, 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 like this. And so I remember he. God bless Vincent Crane. I really liked him. We got on well. So he always had this fun. I think maybe that's what he liked in me because I was a rhythm player and I ended up doing a lot of sessions in the 80s, especially for dance music, playing cheap type rhythm guitar, so I could do all that. So a lot of, and I hadn't really developed my lead playing skills. So yeah, I think so that combined. And when Pete French left, he said, we got to find a singer. We've got to get a singer. We've got to get a singer. And the singer that I come from Manchester with was a great singer, a bit eccentric, but I thought it'd be perfect. And then one day Vincent Crane said, no, I think I'm going to get Chris Farlow in the band.
Yeah, yeah.
I looked at Rick and we both went,
right.
Oh,
Right. Did Chris play with James Litherland? Did he?
yeah, in Colosseum.
Yeah, okay. I thought so. I thought they did.
Albert Lee in this band. And
Right.
so I think him joining it. So I was in the band for, like a year and a half. Pete French was the first third of that, and then the remaining 2/3 was with Chris Fowler. And Chris Fowler, he didn't like me. I could tell he didn't like me. When he's passing on stage, he hit me on the head with a tambourine. I thought, what?
Yeah, he's still around. Yeah, Chris is still around. Yeah.
Right. We did a gig with this Atomic Rooster in Poland about 4 years ago, and I'm at the bar, and these Polish guys are saying, they say, Steve, so do you ever see Chris Farlow? And I hadn't seen Chris from 1972 to this point.
Oh, okay.
You know, and right on cue, the elevator door opened, and Chris walked out. Went, Steve, how's it going? He came over to me. I thought,
yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah. Well, I still like Chris's single "Out of Time."
oh
That's still a great song. Great song. Yeah. Well, why did the following year? Why did you leave the band? Why did you leave Atomic Rooster?
Okay, we did a gig. Well, I was starting to get a bit restless, you know. I thought I'm young, I want to move on, and I'm not actually like that. I like things to be stable, you know. I don't like, but you know, I thought it was getting to the point where I thought I'm not really enjoying this. I don't really, and Chris doesn't like me, and we don't that. So we did a gig with the Atomic Rooster in Belgium, in a public car park, in a shopping mall thing, and there was a guy on playing acoustic guitar singing. It was Mark Ashton.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I mean, I heard Sympathy,
Yeah.
you know, but I didn't really know much about them.
Yeah.
And we got chatting, and we you know, we really kind of got on.
Yeah.
It's a bit like when you're married and you have an affair. You mean something.
Yeah. By the way, they all hated that song. Mark said they all hated Sympathy. Yeah.
I remember me on the drums, you know. So
Yeah.
we got chatting, and he said, "I've got an album there with EMI Records," and you know, I kind of it's a very weird thing because it was his album deal.
Yeah.
But he invited me on board.
Yeah.
So we did 2 albums. The first album we did, and I got a song on there. Mark, you know, asked me if I had any songs. And this guy John Anthony, who I'm still in touch with, produced that one and the next one. But it wasn't really a band. It was like just Mark and myself, and Philip Chen as a session player. You know, the guy that played with you. You know Philip Chen. Have you heard of him?
Yes. Oh, yes.
And then an American guy called Chili Charles, a black dude on drums. And we went down to Rockfield Studios in Monmouthshire in Wales.
Yeah.
In the old, they had an 8-track or 16-track studio, very primitive. And then now everyone uses Rockfield. It's a big time studio. But and we went and did this album there. It was a great experience, you know. And then we got a band together proper because Joe O'Donnell had played on one of the tracks on the first Headstone album. And then so parallel with this, I'm sharing a flat in North London with Rick Parnell.
Okay.
This was a madhouse. This was
Was it?
Rick was off playing with an Italian band, and so I was doing because I like pop music, and Mark's it's pop music. I like pop music. I have a pop sensibility. I like to think that everything I write, people go, "No, Steve, this is not pop music."
Right. Yes.
So I had that melodic thing. I like that.
Yes, I do too.
But at the same time, so if I'm a few deviations here, but it all ties in.
That's all right.
Rick and I came back from a European jaunt with Atomic Rooster, and we were in a minicab in a taxi coming back from Heathrow Airport to our apartment, and we heard some late night radio program, and it was like this most amazing music with electric violin and guitar, and the guy said, "That's a new album by John McLaughlin, In a Mounting Flame." We went, some of that.
Right.
So between us, we bought the album, and we had one of our sessions at the flat, and people, visiting musicians from America would come, and all sorts of people would come, and the front lounge was huge, and we had all these foam things, and we had a hi-fi that you could plug headphones in, but it didn't cut the speakers off, you know. So
Okay.
we'd imbibe in acid and LSD, you know. But one day we put this. We decided we were there, and Rick said, and we had friends there that weren't experienced, and Rick said, "Shall we put that record on?" You know, that John McLaughlin and Mouse.
Yeah.
We put it on. Everyone's like, it's
feeling it.
Record on the from the first note, you went, and this thing went around the room and just like engulfed everyone. Everyone's going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And that album,
Yeah.
so that whole thing with Jerry Goodman on electric violin, and so I became friends with Joe. He moved into the flat. Rick went to America, so I ended up sharing a flat with Joe, and we were really, really into the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Yeah.
At the same time as being involved with this new second Headstone band.
Okay.
Jerome Rimson, who's a black dude from Detroit, who jumped.
Yes.
And he joined, and then what's the drummer called? Pete Van Hook on drums.
Yes.
We had all this stuff. So Mark was writing these songs, these pop songs, that were in a way quite naive, pop songs, but great melodically. And Joe and I were writing these lines that went through the songs.
Yes.
So we would be on stage, and Joe would have these massive speakers, and we'd be like weaving these magical lines through the songs, through these pop songs. And I think that second Headstone album's great. It's got some of that magic on that we were getting into.
Yes, I do too. That's what I commented when I talked to Mark. Yeah, and Jerome mentioning his name on that. Well, was it the first album? No, maybe it was. No, it was the second one. It was the second album, Karma. Remember the track Karma?
Yeah. Karma.
And he said that was his influence. He wrote it, I guess. It has that Curtis Mayfield kind of feel to that song.
Well, Curtis Mayfield, yeah. It's like, for me, on guitar, I was a big Curtis Mayfield fan.
Yeah.
Fly album, when that came out, I like
Yes. Right.
Great. There's a great Curtis Mayfield and that band live at the Bottom Line. I think it's a double album.
Yeah.
Right. That band and the bass playing, the lopey bass lines and stuff, like
Oh, and I know Paul Weller of the Jam was heavily influenced by Curtis too.
And Jimi Hendrix,
and yes.
It's funny when you get into stuff and you think, I'm on my own here.
Yeah.
Then you discover that, oh, you like that as well. It's
Right.
It's an album that when I was living with my parents, one of the albums I had was, I don't know how I got it. I think I heard a session on the John Peel show. It was a band called Tomorrow.
Oh, right.
Keith West. With Grocer Jack. Tomorrow had Steve Howe.
Yes, Steve. Yes.
Pre
yes.
Steve Howe was almost going to join Atomic Rooster, but I beat him to the punch.
Oh, is that right?
This album, Tomorrow, I had it, and I had a mono version. And when the drummer in my band is a bit younger than me, he's about 15 years younger than me. We discovered that we were both into Tomorrow, and he sends me all these. He's a real knowledgeable vinyl guy, and he sends me all these. He said, "Have you heard this?" And it's a Tomorrow doing like, we had a club in London called UFO Club, which is a psychedelic club.
Yes.
I wasn't in London then. This was in the 60s, and the house band were Pink Floyd with
UFO.
Barrett. And when
Right.
they started to get a modicum of success and went on the road, Tomorrow became the house band, you know.
Yes.
So
I reached out to Keith West not long ago. I don't expect to hear back from him, but I did reach out to him,
yeah.
about doing an interview, you know. But yeah, you recorded with David Bowie.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's on my CV. Basically, I was doing an album, I think 1978, something like that, with a guy called Zane Griff, a
Okay.
Zealand guy that was living in London, very good looking, like David Bowie's kind of lookalike.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did this album with Tony Visconti producing,
All right.
and we had the drummer from Ultravox, Warren Cann, was on it.
Oh wow. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and the
That,
and the keyboard player programmer was Hans Zimmer.
okay. Okay. Yeah.
So it was like me, Zane was playing bass, I was on guitar. There's another keyboard player and Warren Cann on drums, and who was like a machine. Warren Cann he was like a
Oh
machine,
yeah.
uh, uh, and Hans Zimmer,
Uh-huh.
who didn't really. He was just like, yeah. I never thought he would.
Yeah.
I
Right.
never thought that he'd be like one of the richest, composers in the whole world.
Right.
Who would have thought that?
At that time, yeah.
Yeah,
Ultravox has always been the post. John Fox was okay that period. I
yeah,
couldn't really get into it. I was more the mid-year period, the later
right.
Ultravox. Yeah, yeah, it's a great
One
band.
day, Tony Visconti,
Yeah,
who's in the album,
yeah,
uh, said, "I've got a session for you tomorrow. I can't tell you who it's for, but you can probably guess."
yeah,
Said, "Just be at Good Earth Studio, his studio, at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." I said, "Right, cool." And of course, David's there.
yeah.
But what it was, in that time, there was a TV program, a guy called Kenny Everett. It was a zany DJ on the radio.
Yeah.
He had a TV program called the Kenny Everett Video Program, and David was going to and it people would re-record songs, and then there'd be a video for it, just purely for this program.
Oh, okay.
So he was re-recording. Is it Panic in Detroit or Riot in Detroit? I can't remember.
Oh, one of my favorites. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And Space Oddity.
yes.
So I was playing on this track,
Yeah.
on this too. So that's my bit with David.
Oh, that's what. Okay.
We're
Is it?
together, David and me.
Yeah.
We're doing the guitars for Space Oddity. At one point I went, I said, "You're David Bowie, aren't you?" He went, "Yeah, that's right." And
That,
Robert Plant, I did some stuff with Robert Plant, and I went down to Peter Gabriel's studio in the West Country, and this never happened, but it was going to have the same management as the Who. I was going to play with Robert Plant, and Robert's on a stool going, "Baby, baby, baby, baby," and
oh, yeah.
I said, "My God, you're Robert Plant." He went, "Yeah, that's right." So sorry, it's not much of a day, but it's
Yeah, yeah. Well, you did have your time with him, though. You did. Well, I want to hear this. What was the U.S. tour with John Otway like? The '81 tour. What a idiosyncratic character. Yeah.
I've just been watching a couple of videos for John. My wife and I, Louise, we went to see him
Yeah.
relatively recently in a local theatre down here, and we've chatted with him.
Oh, all right.
It's hilarious. He's got a band, but somebody put up about this guy's doing a tour of Italy. A guy, he's like a heavy metal guy. There's a whole different world, and he's played two guitars at once.
Oh, okay.
And play two guitars. I said, "No, I think you'll find that John Otway, he's got this guitar with a hinge down the middle, and he bangs them together." And
Yes, he did some crazy stuff.
but I just met my first wife, the heart surgeon wife. But anyway, I met her, we love, and I got this chance to go and have an audition with John Otway, who I knew with. He had a duo, him and Wild Willie Barrett, but he was going to tour America. And I hadn't been to America since the Atomic Rooster thing, but it was like one of those cartoons, you know, where you get a dotted line going around.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
6 weeks I got playing in country and western bars and strip clubs in the deep south of America in a van,
Yeah.
without air conditioning in
Oh,
high August, you know, July, driving around. We couldn't, it was a personnel carrier, no the windows open, it had windows in, but we
yeah.
couldn't. And we took our guitar amps as excess hand baggage on Freddie Laker. It was bizarre. But I remember we did the first gig I did with John Otway on the Guinness estate in Dublin. We had one gig, and then we went off to America. And we were opening up for the Police.
Okay.
The Police were on there. And that's the first time I saw Stuart Copeland's drums with. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
So John said to me before, he said, Steve, he said, you know when things go wrong on stage and it's bad? I said, yeah. He said, with me, that's good.
It's good.
We got the gig. The drummer, who's a bit of a crybaby, as we found out, what's the worst thing that can, sorry, he's a very nice guy. What's the worst thing that can happen to a drummer? He breaks the snare skin. What's the even worse thing? He breaks a bass drum head.
Oh, yeah.
Bass goes through in the first song. And it was a single-headed kit, so he couldn't even, it was like straight. So all of a sudden, and he starts like crying.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no.
By this time, Otway's flat on his back, covered in blood, and he turns around to me and went, this is good.
He liked that.
Oh, it must possibly be good.
Yes.
He jumped on the kit and he's doing like,
Yeah. He's a true anti-rock, star. I mean, just yeah.
I remember, oh man. We played in Kane's Ballroom in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is the home of country and western music.
Yeah.
And we were absolutely murdering, you know, favorite songs of the country and western people. And we were on there. And I remember these cowboys lined up in the front of the stage going, you're fucking dead. You're dead, buddy. You're dead. And we were always going, this is good.
It's like, did you have the chicken wire to protect you?
But, we did. When we played in Texas, we did.
You did. Okay.
I remember it was in Dallas or somewhere. We played in a club, a punk club, behind caged wire. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
While we were on this tour with John Otway, he had a record deal with Stiff Records.
Right.
And we used to do a version of the Green Grass of Home. You know, but we did like a punk thing.
The punk version.
You like and you all come to me, oh, the green grass and boom, bam. Oh, they are. And he said to me, when we were in America, we recorded it in a studio in Chicago, and it's going to be released when we got back. He says, Steve, I've had a brilliant idea. I thought, oh, here we go. He said, I've had a brilliant idea. He said, every 50th copy of the single won't have a vocal on it, right? And if a person buys the single and it hasn't got a vocal on, they phone the number on the sleeve, and you and me go round to their house and we play. A few weeks later, the phone rang and he said, Steve, it's John. He said, we're on. He said, we're going up to Leicester, which is like in the Midlands, you know.
Yeah.
A car came round with Otway in it, and I got my 100-watt combo and my Strat, and we put it in the car, and we went up to the house. And it it was just a normal house, you know, with normal.
Yes.
Hey, and they had a front, and they cleared all the furniture back, and they
Uh-huh.
extended family like the grannies and granddads, and they all
Yeah.
had the best china out.
Yeah.
This room like about, you know, about 10 feet square. I don't know.
Oh, right.
And I put my 100-watt guitar amp in there.
Uh,
They had a record player system, you know, and so they put the record on with the backing track, but I was playing live guitar and he
yeah.
was
He
live,
was singing.
and he started double
Yeah.
thumb horribly wrong and big
Yeah.
lanky three like me and
Yeah.
kicked up over smack. Children were crying.
Oh, wow.
People
Oh. Freaking out.
were like completely traumatized, uh,
Yeah.
and it was a complete disaster. You know, it wasn't. You know, it was a mess. It was a
Yeah.
mess. We smashed furniture, the rest of the thing, and and we got in the car, and that was the first time someone turned around to me and he went, "I think that went rather well, don't you?"
He thought it went great. Well, who from that album got the version without the vocals then?
I don't know. It only happened once.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't do it again. Yeah, fun. Well, moving on to Paul Young. How did
Yeah.
you come to start working with him, with Paul?
Well, I kind of knew about Paul. He had a band, you know, I don't know. Well, I wasn't really interested in that kind of music. He had a band, what were they called? Q-tips, I think they were horns and stuff, you know. But apparently he got a major record deal, a solo deal, and they did the first album with a friend of mine producing it, Laurie Lathan, and they almost completed the album. And I think they'd done a couple of gigs without guitar. There was no guitar on the album. And I mean, this is the album that went quadruple platinum. It was just, you know, it was massive. And so I got a phone call. Would I go up and have a blow with them? Because they tried it without guitar and they thought they needed a guitar player. So I could do all that rhythm stuff and do the 80s stuff, like lead stuff, you know, like wild tremolo arm stuff and that. And yeah, I went up and it went really well. And Paul came over. He said, "Oh, we're a track short for the album. Have you got any?" And the night before, I'd written a song just quickly because I borrowed a drum machine, the TR-808 drum machine, and written a song based around that. It's nonsense lyrics, you know, Cuckoo Karama. And I played it. I gave him the cassette, and he said, "Yeah, I love it. We'll do it." So we went in the studio. So it was great. So all of a sudden, CBS were wanting to give me an advance of like 20 grand. So I went out and bought the car of my dreams, a Volkswagen,
Yeah,
and a new bed, you know. So it
yeah.
was all stuff. But yeah, that was a fantastic band. And we went off and we just played. We went around the world like 2 or 3 times, just went round playing. We played like every single day for like 2 years, you know. We didn't have any time off.
Wow.
And it was crazy, you know,
Yeah,
very crazy time.
yeah. Were you exhausted? Were you exhausted though, playing that much?
I was so we're doing so many.
You're on a natural high. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I mean.
Yeah, right. All natural, all natural.
Yeah, there came a point when uh, I decided I had to leave, and the two girl singers
Yeah,
decided time because we'd heard they were doing tracks for the third album, I thought, or for the second album without us. You know, they're using some dudes on BVs and they weren't playing, and it was all getting a bit weird, you know, as things do.
yeah,
Bands, especially when bands are that close, you know, things get a bit weird after a while. It's the perfect. It's a normal thing that happens, you know.
sure.
So I said, yeah. So we did Gonna Tear Your Playhouse Down. I said to Paul, like, I'll fulfill all the commitments we've got to promote this single, but I'm leaving. And then he tried to convince me otherwise. So then I went off and I formed a band, and I was quite happy not to be doing that
Yeah,
anymore.
right.
I
Well,
think
how did you go
after
ahead?
9 months, they phoned me up, him and the keyboard player, and said, "Look, we've got this guy in, but it's really not happening. We'd really like you to come back, you know. So I'd done the first album, the second album, and I did the third album. And I said, I'll come back and do the third album, you know, I'll play on it. But I didn't think it through. I didn't think that, I just never crossed my mind that I would have to then be and promote it and go around the world. So then we ended up opening up for Genesis on a world tour. Then we did that world tour on our own. And it was just like 9 months on the road, you know.
Oh,
It was great. It was good. It was good to get good money.
right.
But yeah,
That's a
I'm
long
still
time.
friends with Paul, you know, I still see him now and
Yeah.
in touch
Well,
with him.
it just kind of ran its course for you, you know. But
Friend.
yeah. Well, how did you get the part of Spider in the Dylan movie Hearts of Fire?
Yeah, well researched. I don't know, yeah, so there's a bird fight going on here. Yeah, magpies fighting the pigeons. Magpies.
Oh, the Magpies are going to win, bro.
Yeah, I just got this phone call from a girl at Virgin Records. She would phone me up, this girl, now and again, and say, "Steve, I've got you." And she phoned me up one day and said, "Steve, are you free to do some TV promotion with one of our artists?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Who is it?" She said, "Oh, it doesn't make sense." I said, "Who is it?" She said, "Oh, it's Donny Osmond." I said, "Who?" She said, "It's Donny Osmond." I said, "I'll do it." Anyway, so Bob Dylan's doing this film with Richard Marquand directing it. I think the film killed him. He died before the film, and it had ever. I think this film took. It was odd, you know, because I think Bob was going through a weird phase where he wasn't communicating with anybody. In fact, I've seen documentaries where the making of this film, where they're in Canada, and some guy's going, I've finally been granted an interview with Bob, and it's taken such a long time to get to. So he ends up going in Bob's trailer while they're doing this film, and Bob wouldn't talk to him. He just sat, and he was asking, like, trying to interview Bob, and Bob was just drawing caricatures of the guy. He said it's most disconcerting, but anyway.
Sure.
So I was asked to. The first scene I did was in a warehouse down by the River Thames. It was just down the road from where I lived, so I was told to go there, and there was a line of caravans, trailers, small trailers, you know, and I had my own trailer.
Oh, okay. You hit the big time, yeah.
I've done a bit of film work, you know, a bit of TV adverts, that sort of thing, which is another thing, and it's really, really the most boring, mind-numbing.
Yeah.
How people can be actors, I don't know, because everything's out of sequence, and I think actors generally, I mean, it's true. Don't have much personality, and that's good because they have to sit there all day.
Oh, yes.
Go right now.
Uh-huh.
What's going on? You shut up. You just read your lines, you know. So you do. It's not like you do a film from beginning to end. You're jumping in and doing bits, you know.
Right.
So I'm there, you know, and then we go in this room in a warehouse, and there's some gear set up, and we're miming to this track. Well, Bob decides that I'm too tall to stand next to him.
Oh, did he?
So the director goes, "Steve, can you just sit in the back and drink beer?" I said,
"Sure." That's what I do best. Yeah.
Got live mics over. She's got live mics over, but Bob's not talking to anybody. You know, it's just like grunting, and they've got live mics, but they're miming to a song. And what's supposed to happen is, at the end of the song, the drummer does a drum fill, but like mental drum fill, and the live mics come on, and Bob's got to turn around to the drummer and say, who was called Nico, his part was Nico. "Hey, Nico, this ain't World War III, you know." No, that, hey, Nico, not so heavy on the drums. This ain't World War III, you know. But could he get it right?
Yeah.
But not only that, Bob was playing his guitar through an amp,
Uh-huh.
actually on scratching, which you couldn't hear when the mics were off. But as soon as the track finished and the live mic, Bob's still like ching, ching, ching.
Uh-huh.
The producer's going, Bob, great. Could you turn the volume down on your guitar? Because when the live mics come on, you know, but
Right. Yes, yes.
so they had to employ someone then to lie on the floor behind his amp with their hand on the volume knob, because Bob wanted to play along with the track.
He
When the track finished, you
turn it down.
Bob
Yeah.
was scratching away, you know, the guitar. And they would go, hey, drums, this ain't World War Nico. And they go, cut.
Yeah.
Almost, Bob. Hey, Nico, this ain't World War III, you know, not so heavy on the drums. Okay. So they run the whole track again, the guy in the back, turn it down. Hey, World War, this ain't no knocking on the drums. And like 3 hours later, it's like, he still hasn't got it
He
right.
still hasn't. Oh God. now, now, see, that's a story that I don't think many people know about. Right there, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did one more scene in this film. It was up at there's a ballroom in Camden Town called the Electric Ballroom, and middle of the day, you know, but they had Rent-A-Crowd in there, and they're all the weirdos, you know, Mohicans, and there's a crowd, you see, and I'm there early, there's no one there. Basically, we were going, and I was on stage for this, and we were miming to this sort of cod reggae, white reggae type thing, you know, that thing. But there was a support band on in the scene.
Yeah.
Now, the support band were the biggest name in London at that time, called Zodiac, Mind Warp, and the Love Reaction.
Yes.
Now, these guys, bands I should have been in, number 35. This is one of them.
Right.
These guys look like Hell's Angels. They had
Uh-huh.
jackets on and they had the Nazi helmets on, but it was covered in Sanskrit writing. So what they were doing, they were mixing genres. They were coming across like Hell's Angels, but with all hippie stuff and beads, you know.
Yes, yes,
Stuff was almost like Motorhead, moronic, you know.
yes.
So the track and the word came, I'm there early, and the word came along that Zodiac, Mind Warp, and Love Reaction won't be here today because they've been thrown in the nick.
Did they?
They caused a riot somewhere in there. But I had a copy of their lyric sheet.
Yeah.
And I thought this is brilliant. And the track they were going to mime to in this scene was called The High Priest of Love. And I had the lyric sheet, and the lyric sheet went, I'm the high priest of love. I'm shooting babies from the end of my dick. This ain't science, baby. This is magic. Timing couplet there.
Yeah.
Just pop in the room, and I go up with the lyric sheet. I said, "You all right, Bobby?" I said, "You see this?
Yeah.
I'm shooting babies. I'm the high priest of love. I'm shooting babies from the end of my dick. This ain't science, baby. It's magic." I said, "That's the sort of lyrics you should be writing." That he said, But anyway, so then, you know, there's always a catering bus when you do a film shoot, you know. So I'm in the empty ballroom, and one of the runners came in, or one of the camera crew came in and said, he's reading a fluff. He said, there's a bit of a commotion over at the catering bus. A really straight face. He said, Zodiac, Mind Warp, and the Love Reaction have threatened to smash the place up and beat everybody up if they haven't got any vegetarian food. I said, excuse me? They got to beat everybody up and smash if they haven't got any vegetarian food. I said, I've got to meet these guys. This is like dichotomy. This is.
I was going to say violent vegetarians. That doesn't really go well together.
I went out drinking with them. That.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, I love these stories, Steve, and I know the viewers are going to love this too. That's what I like about doing these. It's those kind of anecdotes that you don't hear about every day. Um, well, in '89, Pete Townshend invited you to join the Who on the Kids Are All Right tour.
So this was at the same point. I got the marital home. We've got a 1-year-old son in and pre mobile phone. So one day I had to see my wife, and I'm at home every day. Same thing. My wife would go out to Harley Street and be having an affair in front of my face, sort of thing. One morning, oh yeah, I must say that Pino Palladino, the bass player in the Paul Young band, I'd done some demos and Pino had played them. We were driving back from the studio we're driving to the studio down in Sussex to do some demos. We're driving along, my Beetle, and Pino, he said, I was with Pete Townshend yesterday. I said, yeah, whatever, Could do the white. He said, he was talking about you. I said, excuse me. He said, yeah, he's a big fan. He said, at one point, he jumped on the desk and did a complete imitation of all your moves and everything. So I pulled the car over to the side of the road and said, say that again.
Yeah, did I hear you right?
So I forgot about that. So
Yeah.
this day, I got up and I'm really depressed. I hadn't worked, hadn't been working. I don't know, life was just, I was in a hole, my wife, and top it all, my wife, the thing. And so this one day I thought, I'm boiling my eggs, I thought, that's it. I'm done with this. I can't go on anymore. The phone rang and I picked it up. I said, hello. He went, Steve. I said, yeah. He said, it's Pete Townshend. I said, yeah, right. Oh, he said, no, not him. Yeah, not hang up.
You're about to hang up, yeah.
He said, I've got a question to ask you. I remember the conversation now. He said, I've got a question to ask you. Will you play lead guitar for the Who? And I'm like, what? I said, excuse me? I said, haven't you forgotten? You're the
I
guitar.
was gonna say, are you sick? Are you?
Like three
Yeah.
times live.
Yeah.
Once about Roger Daltrey because they were I told that. But sorry, no, I can't. And yeah, he said, I've got this hearing problem.
Oh, yeah. Wonder why? Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Be playing mainly acoustic guitar, and I'm a big fan of yours. And there's only 2 people in the whole world I would ask to do this job.
Wow.
One's Joe Walsh. I said, well, you can't have him, can you? He's American.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a septic in the Who. It's not cricket, is it? He went. So so it was quite unbelievable. So it went from being like in a real hole to giving up music to all of a sudden, well, I've got the job with the Who. This is quite, and that's when the real the task. Not only would I'm thinking I'll get so much flack for this, because but that aside, and this is before the internet, so I would get delivered to my house cassettes of stuff, loads of stuff and charts, I can read charts, and but the Who songs are not, especially, so I know the Who stuff up to and probably including Who's Next.
Yeah.
But after that, I know nothing.
Right.
I don't know any of that stuff, Rough Boys and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like new to me, but they're all really complicated. And they're not sort of songs you can wing. You have to learn it. You have to learn it. And so he said, can you come over to my studio? So I drive over to West London. And I'm nervous as hell, as it would be, And there was a funny moment. I went over to his studio. He said, bring some stuff you've been doing. So I still really hadn't got the job. And he said, I guess we should play. Did you bring an acoustic guitar? I said, yeah. And I'm not a big fan of acoustic guitar. You know, I do solo gigs now, but to me, I write songs on it, and there you go. You know, it's an instrument of torture to me.
Is it?
So he said, well, he said to a minion, he said, get the J200 out of the thing. So, and I'm like a bit nervous, you know. So he comes in, the guy opens the case, and the J200's got like a bridge, like a mustache bridge, they call it. And as he opened the case, the bridge flew off. This is a vintage guitar bridge, and all the strings went everywhere.
Oh, did, oh,
See,
yeah.
the guitar smashes itself up rather than, yeah, you've got the top.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, self-destructing. Yeah.
So then he said, but I must tell you, you can't play loud. I said, oh, right, okay. So I was investigating for this job, little amps, you know, like this big,
Yeah.
like 10-watt amps, you know, thinking this is mental, you know. And also he said, I'm not going to be there, neither's Roger or John, for the first 3 weeks, because we'll be off doing pre-tour publicity around America. We've got a musical director, Chucho, and he's playing bass. Now I must step in. This guy, he didn't like me. He wanted his friend in, you know, so he was giving me a hard time. And I'm like, don't give me a hard time. I've got the job, you know, get used to it. So we're in a studio in West London, a huge room, but because all this stuff in there, like horn section, percussionist, you know. Oh yeah, Pete did come to a rehearsal once in a small rehearsal room, and I was using a mezzo boogie, and he came up and said, "Can I have a word with you?" He said, "You can't play that loud." I'm thinking, oh, that wasn't loud. You
Yeah.
know, I said, "Yeah, okay." So there's all this pressure on me.
Yeah.
Not only am I doing the gig with the Who? I'm also not being loud, and also covering. He said, because when I go around America, I'm not going to be there, so I want you to cover for my part. He said, I love what you do. You do your thing over the top, but also cover for me. I think, right, okay. And I've got to learn all
Yeah.
these songs, 120 songs, one of which is the whole of Tommy.
Oh, right, right, right.
Um, um, I mean, I've told this story
Yeah.
before, but this kind of sums it up for me. We're in this big room, the studio in West London, and I've got the Ox, who then, he's the first one to arrive of the three main guys. And he's got all his bass gear, which is the size of this room. And it's like super loud. So all of a sudden I'm cranking my gear up, you know. I've got two Messerberger stuff. And then Roger comes in. Strips to the waist. He's like, yeah, okay, right, let's do it, you know, like. And then when Pete turns up, it's obvious that Pete's the boss, you see. So then Pete comes in, and because of the tinnitus problem, the crew have built him a little house in the one far corner of the rehearsal room, made of sound screens, you know, the ones with windows in.
Yes, yes.
Got a couple of speakers, you know, like speakers on the wall, and his acoustic guitar and a mic, you know. And he's over there, directly diagonally opposite me, and I'm over here like so. And we're at a point where we're playing the songs, but I've got reams and reams of paper all over the floor, charts, chord charts, and I'm like, so we're actually playing the songs, but we're not we're not living the songs. You know, we're still in that period where I can't look away from the bits of paper because I'm still learning the
You're
song.
still learning. Yes, yes.
So Pete and his entourage come in, and
Yeah.
a minion comes up to all of us, and he goes, Pete would like the band to play the overture from Tommy. And I'm going like, okay, fine. No, like the overture from Tommy. So this is like an operatic overture where you've got bits of this, bits of that, all combined into this 8-minute section at the front of an opera. That's what an overture is, right?
Yes.
But and in that overture, it's got the famous Pinball Wizard,
Mhm.
but in a different key.
Oh, all right.
So and it doesn't do the descending chord thing. It just did that down, down, down. So I've been doing that because he's not here. See what I
Uh-huh.
mean? I've been
Yeah.
doing it. He's told me to cover his ass.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it goes as if bang when a band hits the G chord and leaves the rhythm guitar. So I turn my Strat down in a, you know, proximity of an acoustic guitar. I go down, 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 down. Ever since I was, like, you know what I mean? So I've been
Yes.
doing that. But no one's looking at each other because we're all looking at charts at once. Stuff going on. It comes to this bit, and I see it in my mind's eye, I see it coming up. See?
Uh-huh.
And I
Yes.
think, oh, like, I'll do it. Oh, no, he's here now. So he's going to do it. He's got he's over there, right? So it comes to this bit, bang, and there's nothing.
Oh, nothing.
So I kind of look up, and he's in there like that,
Oh,
glaring
okay.
at me across the room.
Yeah.
So I can't. Well, I don't panic. I just start playing it because he didn't do it. So I
Yeah.
play. He goes, stop! Shout, stop! He gets the acoustic guitar, smashes it in half,
Did he?
kicks open the sound screen, walks straight across the room towards me. At this point, I haven't got a friend in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
He goes right to my face and he goes, listen. He said, that's my fucking bit. He said, leave me something to do for Christ's sake. So I'm thinking, I need this job. This is a good job, but I'm not taking this, So I pull him gently by the lapels, Pete Townshend, and I go, listen, while you've been swanning around America, I've been covering for you. And I'm not stupid, but this bit is your bit. I know. And because you haven't been here, I've been doing it. But now you're here. I assumed
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
tiny you do it, but you didn't do it. So I did. You know what he said? He looks at me and said, "It's my band. I can do whatever I like."
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah.
all right, okay, all right.
Uh-huh.
Now I know. Listen, but it was great. It was great, and what an experience! And it was like 4 hours every night. So it
Yeah.
wasn't a band just cashing in on something. It was really, and I kind of liked, although he wasn't the Who,
Yeah.
because it was an extended thing. You would never replace Keith Moon.
No, no, no.
Well, but just to be there and on next to John Entwistle, wasn't at the back dressed in black with white gloves or anything. It
Right.
was. I like to think it was the last period of the Who that was worthy of the name. I mean, it's been dragging on now for. I'm sorry. I think it's really.
Maybe you should just keep it up there permanently. No, no, no. But it was a good experience for you. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Have you spoken to Pete in the years since? Have you talked?
No, I haven't, and he
Yeah.
famously,
Yeah.
that's what he's like. I actually he sent me a video on my birthday it was about 10 years ago now, wishing me happy birthday and saying we haven't played together. It was a great experience, so it's on. But I remember Pino did a tour with him around America every night there. He said, you never guess what happened. 3 days after they got back from the tour, Pino said I was in Hamleys, the big toy store in the West End of London, big posh, it's a famous toy store, like Harrods of toys, and he was queuing up. Pino was queuing up. He bought his kids something, and Pete Townshend was in the queue to the
Was it?
cash thing. And Pino went to Pete, went, "Hi, Pete," and Pete looked at me, went, and just turned away again. It's like, this is who we're dealing. This is who we're
Yeah.
dealing.
Right, right. Well,
An entity of himself, I mean.
yeah. It's like they say, consider the source, right? You know.
I
Yeah.
mean, absolutely. The
Yeah.
smashing of guitars, I mean,
Yeah.
like
Right, right, right.
great thing. It's an artistic statement. But when he does it, and I've seen him do it at sound check, smash the 12-string Rickenbacker
Yeah.
because his
Right.
guitar tech wasn't there. He's playing,
Yeah.
and it's really scary.
Yeah. You're taken aback by that. Yeah.
So it's really brutal.
Right. 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 Yeah. It wasn't just for show on stage. Yeah. It's he can really
Really
uh
mean.
you really mean it. Yeah. When he does it.
There's loads of stories, but because they were always running out of money because back in the early days, I saw them 3 times when I was a teenager, and every time they smashed all the gear.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there was only one shop in London that sold 12-string Rickenbackers, and that's what the whole of the first album. People think that like the Who's bombastic loud. They think the track My Generation. If you listen to the track My Generation,
Yeah.
and I said this to John Entwistle, I said, "You're the one making all the racket." He said, "Yeah, I'm glad you said that because people assume it's Pete."
It's Pete. Yeah.
And it's only a 12-string Rickenbacker on there. There's no loud fuzzy guitars or anything. If you listen to that whole first album, it's just that 12-string chiming Rickenbacker.
Right.
Even down, 12-string Rickenbacker, and it's a great thing.
That's right. I've always liked the sound of the Rickenbacker too. Well, moving on to in '91, you formed the band 6'3".
Right. Yeah.
Who was in the band?
Well, this was I got into doing solo acoustic gigs.
Okay.
And I was quite happy doing that. I mean, I'd never, as I said, acoustic guitar. But then the first solo acoustic gig, I thought, well, I was living in Greenwich, and there's a Greenwich market, arts and crafts market, and I needed some money, and I'd never done. A lot of people, that musicians I know, have done busking, where they play in the street. I had never done that. It scares me, and to do something by yourself. But I thought I'll give it a go. I went in there, and I had a steel guitar, like a dobro, and I started playing. People were throwing money at me. I thought that was like this is in early
Yeah.
This is a real realization for me.
Right.
I thought I didn't have money. I played some songs, and now I've got money. I said, "This is fantastic." It was a big revelation. So I started doing solo gigs. And I still do them now.
Yeah.
But there was always
Yeah. That happened before. It's almost like you have to hit bottom in order you have to be empty to be filled up for something to come into your life. Just like with the Who, what you were going through in your life.
It would be nice to have something and have more something.
Yeah, to be at that level.
But now you're up again. Yeah, can I stay up for a bit? That'd be really
right. Exactly.
My life is great, and I'm doing it. But anyway, so 6'3".
Yeah.
So I wanted to form a band, and this producer, I was having a beer with him. He said I was working with a fantastic drummer. I did think about approaching Stuart Copeland because he's a top type drummer. I thought if I'm going to form a 3-piece band, I want it to be like a dogfight. I want it to be where everybody in the band is playing for their very existence. Because I think when you go on stage, it's got to be like you've got to play like it's the last time you'll ever play, because it may well be, And I didn't want it to be like I wanted it to be like Cream, like all the 3-piece where everyone's going for it, and if there's a hole there, I'm going to jump in, because if you don't jump in, you know what I mean? That's what I wanted. And he said he's exactly right for you, and he's like as tall as you, if not a bit taller. Blonde hair, but he's got and then I said, yeah, he sounds great. He's called Jim Kemp, but he's got a brother who's exactly the same, plays bass. I went, I need these guys,
Yeah.
Oh, we got together, and it was just fantastic. It was brilliant. And we're still in touch. And, but when bands come up with a name, I say, you've got to remember that for bands to come up with a name, this is weeks of intense infighting. They don't just come up with a name. They go like, "Oh, I think you fuck off," like that. And they this shit, And so we after the rehearsal, we would go in the pub, have a few beers, you know, just as you do. And we're trying to come up with a name, you know. I mean, come up with all these silly names. And then one day I just said, look, I said, it's my band. Let's just call ourselves 6'3", because there are three of us and we're all 6'3". It's
Okay.
you
Yeah.
can't call it that. I said, that's it, called 6'3".
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's how that.
I thought that's it, it pertained to your height. Yeah. So you're an inch taller than myself. Yeah, I'm 6'2".
Right.
So yeah. Yeah.
So I tell you, the drummer, Jim Kimberly,
Mhm.
got a very sharp tongue and very sarcastic. A lot of people don't like. But we were in. We did a gig up north somewhere, and we stayed in a hotel. And I think we got up, and we were a bit the worse for wear. And there was a little Scottish woman, like very tiny, mopping the floor in the hotel. And as we walked past, and she looked, she said, "Oh, you're all really tall, aren't you? Do you play basketball?" And Jim went right down the face, said, "No. Do you play miniature golf?"
That's great. What a comeback. Oh, that's a good that's great.
Something outside that he would say, yeah.
Yeah.
We went and
Yeah.
there was some fat
Yeah.
people.
That's a good Scottish accent. I have to say that's the hardest, most difficult accent for me to
Understand.
to understand. Yes. Any area in the UK. Uh, the interviews that I've done, most of them are aware of that. They're talking to an American or someone that's not Scottish, and they enunciate and and are slower when they speak. But I talked to one guy who he was just like talking to his mate, like he talks every day, and half and most, about half of what he was saying, I was agreeing with him, but I wasn't commenting. I was okay, whatever you're saying. Yeah, I didn't understand half of what came out of his mouth.
Atomic Rooster now.
Yeah.
We have a drummer and Paul is great. He does all the business side. He's really good. He's from Liverpool.
Okay.
He's the thickest.
Oh, that's another one. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And he will say stuff. We were in like we'll be in like Poland or somewhere. People just and he go, "Hey, they want to come like that." And after I go, "Let me explain."
Let me translate. Yeah. 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 I've heard even there you guys have difficulty understanding from different parts of the UK, different people.
It's a small country.
Yeah.
The accents change. Even in Manchester, the accents change.
Oh yeah.
People in Manchester are like 35 miles apart, but
Yeah.
accent wise.
Oh, isn't that? Yeah. In fact, when I went to Manchester, I mentioned we went to a McDonald's, and I had the hardest time understanding the guy that was working there. I knew he did say, "Can I take your order?" But everything else just kind of like we had to have him repeat it a couple of times.
My
Yeah.
first trip with
Yeah.
the States with Rooster, we went to New York first of all, and I'm really straight from Manchester, and so I go in there. This is before, but and I went in a cafe, and it was for New York. It was all like that, and I thought, well, I want a Frankfurter and chips.
Yeah. Yeah. Did they look at you
Like,
like, what planet
yes,
are you? What planet are you from? Yeah.
the Frankfurter and chips. He went, what? I want Frank. I said, sorry. I want Frankfurter and chips. No, don't say please. I think you're a faggot.
I'm surprised you didn't say crisps instead of chips.
For a young band, we had two girl singers in the band. One, Maz, who's Pino's wife, from Liverpool, and we had a tour bus where we would travel overnight, and we would just. And one day it must have been at 5 o'clock, and we were in the middle of the Arizona desert, a truck stop, and I think I might suffer from a condition like low blood sugar or something. Because when I get hungry, like people go shopping for food before they're hungry. Me,
Yes.
I'm not interested until I'm hungry. Then it's like, watch out. I
Yeah.
can't,
And that's when you spend too much money when you're
and
hungry.
I have to apologize to people for the way I was before I ate. I'm sorry. So anyway, so we go in this truck stop, and we're in the line, and Maz is in front of me, and I'm really hungry, and I just running, and so Maz goes into this whole monologue with the sassy blonde waitress woman, and in England it's perfectly normal to go, to go. So basically, she wanted a mixed grill. She wanted a mixed grill, but she didn't want tomatoes.
Okay.
So she approaches the woman like this, and I'm like seething next to her. She goes, yeah, with a she said, and Maz goes, you know your mixed grill. Well, could it? And she goes, sorry, do I know my mixed grill? And Maz, yeah.
Do I know?
No, it would be normal in England to go, you know your mixed grill? Yes. Could I have it without the tomatoes? Okay.
Right.
Right. That's right. She goes, the Maz goes, you know your mixed grill. And she goes, I beg your pardon? Said, you know your mixed grill, could I? And then the waitress goes to, hey, Joe, do I know my mixed grill? Do I know? And I go, Maz, mixed grill, hold the tomatoes. That's all you've got to say. Mixed grill, hold the tomato. She goes, yeah, you know your mixed grill. I said, no.
No, don't do that. Yeah, yeah. It's like what is the saying about we're separated by a common language, right? Yeah, right. Well, I did want to hear a couple of more things here. In '95, you recorded with Scott Walker. He's always been one of my favorites. What was that? What was that like?
Well, okay, so Scott Walker, I must say that when I was with Paul Young band, because Paul was doing covers, he needed suggestions for, and so there's one Scott Walker track. I can't remember, it's on Scott too. It's because you've got to choose. You just can't have the two of us. And it's got these fantastic strings, like tumbling string. Yeah, 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 yeah. Make your fickle mind up. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine, Richard Strange. He said, I love that song. Make your thick old mind up. I
Yeah.
said, you've just ruined that because it's make your fickle mind, fickle.
Thick.
I'm jamming in a bar in South London. And as we're packing the gear up, I'm speaking to the drummer who I just met. I said, so what are you doing? He said, well, I'm doing an album with Scott Walker. And I said, oh. He said, it's not going very well. We've been in the studio now for weeks and we haven't got not one track down yet. He said, I think we could do a bit of your type guitar on there. I said, well, can you put my name in? Yeah, it's like, So I forgot all about it. One day, this is so bizarre. It sounds like I'm lying, but this is exactly what happened. Now I'm in my flat in Southeast London. One day, and I forgot, and one morning the phone rang, and there's a very posh lady on the phone. Said, "Is that Steve?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Is Kathy Nagus Fancy here?" I said, "Excuse me." No,
Yes.
it's Kathy Nagus Fancy. I said, "Oh yeah, okay." She said, "I manage Scott Walker." I went, "Oh, hello, how you doing?" She said, Scott was wondering if he'd be free to play in his latest recording.
Wow. Wow.
Might be, might
Yeah.
be. Let me check. I've got a window.
Let me check my diary. Let me.
So we arranged that I should be at Rack Studios in North London next Monday at 10 o'clock. Right. So it's all arranged. I said, yeah, great, fantastic. Thinking like that. But you got to remember that Scott Walker then wasn't the Scott Walker that we know and love.
Yes.
I heard stories he'd be in the studio and he wouldn't speak to the other musicians. He would only speak in hieroglyphics.
Oh,
He would write hieroglyphics and pass it to the musician, and pass it to the bass player who didn't read hieroglyphics. So, so can you be he said, I'll be there. She said, oh, Steve, before you hang up, she said, she said, have you got one of those big boxes that makes a loud noise?
a big box. Yeah, I didn't know what to call it.
Like guitar amp.
Yes.
Take that with you. I went, yeah. You take that with you? I went, yes.
Steve, I'm gonna start using that when I'm talking in future interviews. When I talk about amps, I'm just gonna say, I like that box. It makes a lot of noise. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I go up to the studio and I'm there, and there's a couple of other session guys there, bass player, and they're like proper musicians, they've got charts, they smoke pipes and they play golf, and I'm like, I've probably been up all night, and I get there and I said, so, and there's no sign of Scott. And the producer comes over and he touched me on, he said, oh, now we have a quiz program on TV and there's the compere is a guy called, it doesn't matter, I won't go into that. But anyway, so he said, great, like that. I said, right, okay. So I'm there a few more hours. All of a sudden, Scott Walker, I'm there, like, must have been on my phone. And it's Scott Walker. So I'm looking at him for like signs of craziness. He's got a bit of a comb over, and he goes, Steve, Scott, nice to have you on board, man. I said, yeah. He said, we haven't written the songs yet, so you must give us some time to fight. So we haven't written the songs yet. So he said, by the way, did you bring your big box thing that makes a lot?
He said that. He said that.
He said, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, there. Yes.
Great, man. Great.
So,
Then he comes back and says, I'm in the studio, I'm thinking, God, I've been here 2 days now and we haven't got anything down. The drummer's right. And they're not faffing around. And then he comes in. He says, Steve, we've written a song. I went, great. He said, you read chord diagram, like chord block diagrams, where the strings go down the thing. He said there are only 3 chords in this song. He said, I've written them on a bit of paper. So that he's like got the 6 lines down and then the thing. And he's got like 1 dot here on the 5th string at the 2nd fret. And the other one's like here at the 11th fret. He said, I can't play these chords. I said, Scott, I don't think anyone can play these chords.
Nobody could.
like 10-foot fingers.
I was gonna say, you gotta have long fingers.
So I think the album I was on is Tilt. And I'm on about 3 tracks, but I'm at the right hand side of the stereo going.
Okay.
I was really kind of upset, I drove back in my Beetle. I was so angry. I punched the steering wheel and broke the steering wheel. That's how upset I was about, because we want to work with Scott Walker, but he's not the same guy, that not that fantastic.
Yeah. If you could have done it many years earlier, right. That's unfortunate. Yeah, you hit him at a time that he was in decline. Yeah, definitely. Well, beginning in '96, you worked as a session guitarist for several years. Who all did you work with?
Well, it was kind of on and off. It was that period when people were still using big studios. I mean, the whole thing's changed now. You can do an album at home, so you don't need that thing. Yeah. But it was good. I would get the odd call, like, can you do this? Can you do that track? Some bizarre situations. And yeah, it was all good.
Yeah, you stayed busy. Yeah, you stayed busy enough. Yeah,
I find it very stressful because I'm not like, there are a lot of proper guitar players around, and I'm like, I have to. The thing I didn't like about doing session work, you presented more often than not with a track that's done. So you go to the studio and you got the artist and the producer and like it, and they play you a track and you've set up, and it's the first time you hear this song, and you're expected to play something on here.
Yeah.
But then you do it and you think, but then you go home and you think, actually, I should have done that. I could have done
Right.
that, because it would be good to go in the next day and do it, but
Yeah.
you don't get that.
Kind of second guessing. Yeah. Right. You have to be on. You have to, like you talked earlier about the acting, sitting around, and then you have to be on when it comes for that part. Yeah. Kind of with the guitarist too, you know.
Yeah, TV adverts. The first one, people would say, you've got that face, you know, you should get on and do some of the TV adverts, you know. And so I'm with a couple of agents, and I don't do so many. But the first one I did, they've closed the loopholes now. I did an advert for IKEA, which is a Swedish furniture maker.
Yeah, we have one over here. Yeah.
All I had to do was put a set of goofy teeth in, and some horn rim glasses, and hold the plate full of biscuits up to the. And I got $3.5 grand for it.
Did you?
This is the business I need to be in.
Right. How can I get jobs like that? How can I get jobs like that, Steve? That's funny. Well, in 2013, you were given the Lifetime Achievement Award. Yeah, hold that up. There you go. There you go. All right. Hey, that would probably how heavy is that? Is it?
It's quite heavy. It's solid.
Okay. It would probably stop an intruder, wouldn't it?
It's very sharp, you know.
Yeah, it's got those sharp edges on it.
I just got this company, Galaxy Entertainment, said, Steve, we'd like to present you with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I got my old boss Paul Young down. He gave a bit of speech before I went it, and I played.
Oh, he was there. Yeah.
Yeah, I went on the all-night bus with you know, up north where we were staying, and I said, don't mess with me. I've got this.
That's right. Well,
on the all-night bus, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's gotta feel good, you know, to be recognized like that. You know?
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's funny, you know, when you think. I mean, we all think that, you know, what we're doing, like, but then stuff comes along and people say stuff, you know, and yeah, it just makes it kind of work.
Yeah, and hearing from fans, you still hear from fans, I'm sure, from the early days, and things like that. And speaking of Atomic Rooster, how did the Reformation come about?
Right, I got approached from an agent who specializes in tribute bands.
Yeah,
and he said he's been approached to provide an Atomic Rooster tribute, and he said, no, I can probably do that. But so he approached me, and I approached Pete French, and we formed it. It's been through a few incarnations, and Pete French has now jumped. Well, we parted ways, but we've just done a new album, the first album in 40 years, a brand new Atomic Rooster song, and it's great. And it's just about to be released. We've got people at Cherry Red Records to.
Oh, right. That's my label. That's my label, Cherry Red. I've gotten so much material from them, and I tell everybody this. You know, a lot of the compilations they put together, even the various artist ones, that's how I pick up on a lot of bands. You know, from
it's Cherry. But I've said to Paul, who's negotiating, they want it, but I don't want it to get swallowed up in like re-release stuff. This is brand new, vital.
This is brand new, right?
Original songs that Adrian, the keyboard player, who's doing the lead vocal, has written 5, and I've written 5, and you know it's really great stuff. I'm really pleased with it.
Hey, you sent me a couple, right? No More and Rebel Devil.
Yeah, just to give you a flavor of.
Yeah,
that's all good stuff.
I like that, and it takes me back because it's got the organ in there, you know, and that it takes me back to that early 70s. Yeah.
Said that when we do gigs, it's like, oh, I was back in the 70s. The sound,
right. That's
what we do is we're really rehearsed. We're really tight. We know what we're doing, and a lot of the songs, even the old, are quite tricky. They're quite tricky, but we can go off we can go off on one and paint ourselves into a corner.
Yeah.
Sort of like in each other's pockets. We just kind of come out. We go, and I will actually point it out to the audience. I go, see, we can put ourselves into a corner, but get out. You know, they like that. They like to know that it's not just a band playing stuff. You know, because so many bands just play stuff and it's so tight.
Yeah.
And you might as well just put the record on it.
There you go. Yeah.
Thing and,
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. That's what I go to live shows for, you know, is to hear a little variation, you know, from the recorded material, you know. Definitely.
Well, go to my YouTube channel, Steve Boltz on YouTube. There's stuff of my band, Dead Man's Corner, which is
right.
like a whole different thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of live clips from the new Atomic Rooster. It's all.
Yeah. Well, real quickly, when did you form Dead Man's Corner?
Right. Well, this is about same thing again. You know, I wanted to. I was in a lot of acoustic stuff, and I said to Louise, I need to form a band again. So, but I do like the idea of a 3-piece. The first incarnation that I met a pedal steel player. Big fan of pedal steel.
I am too. Yeah.
I had one, you know, and I was like, so pedal steel is probably one of the most difficult instruments to get your head round.
Yeah.
And it's played with country western people. So
yes.
And then at the side of the stage, playing pedal steel, you have a brain surgeon.
Yes.
You know, playing so that was, but then that kind of changed. But now I'm crazy for drummers, you know, because if I play drums, and I can't understand why people don't hit the drums.
Yeah. Right.
But now, within a 2-mile radius of where I live, I found the best drummer and the best bass player, and it's drummers like Keith Moon, and he sings harmony.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you know, you're mentioning pedal steel. One of my favorite players, BJ Cole. Yeah. And some of the albums he's played on, I like his style. Yeah.
Cool. Good man.
Yes. All right. Well, we're at almost a 2-hour mark here, Steve. Yeah, but it's all been. I mean, you can tell I enjoy it. How much I've been laughing. You know. I mean, that'll tell you right there. You know. But have you ever thought about a side career as a stand-up comedy? Yeah. You do have Chelsea.
I do say sometimes I do. So people are laughing. I go, it's not supposed to be funny. You know?
Yeah. Then you laugh more. Yeah, after hearing that.
I played in a bar, and round the corner was some traveling people. I think they were having a gathering, you know, and I'm just being myself, and I talk. I like to talk, especially when I do solo shows. I have a long lead, and I come out and do stuff. And this one point, this guy shouted at me. He said, "Hey, mate!" He said, "Mate, I've no idea what you're talking about, but it's the funniest shit I've ever heard."
That's a good compliment. Yeah. Right. Thanks again so much for doing this. And again, I will send you a copy of this, you know, probably the following weekend, probably next weekend. And then, yeah, you can post it, and it'll be on my channel. Cool. And then see if we get some reaction to it, and be sure to tell everybody. Yeah. All right then, Steve. All the best to you. Stay in touch. I will. And I hope you have a good rest of the weekend and a good week coming up.
Right. And you, man. All right. Cheers. Bye. Bye-bye.